The gravity died the way a thought sometimes does, mid-sentence without drama, leaving only a pause where certainty used to be. One moment my boots were loyal to the deck, the next they were negotiable, and then entirely optional. My body drifted forward, slow and offended, coffee beads lifting from the rim of my mug like they had suddenly remembered more important places to be. I sighed. Of course, I said to no one in particular. It's never the lights. It's never the oxygen, it's always gravity, because why wouldn't it be? The ship answered with silence, the deep, expensive silence of experimental hardware pretending nothing had happened. I reached for the nearest handhold and missed it by a centimeter, which is a very funny distance in zero gravity. My momentum carried me forward, rotating gently, coffee pearls orbiting my head like judgmental satellites. I caught the rail on the second try and pulled myself in, blinking as the status lights on the wall shifted from reassuring blue to a color that could only be described as "we'll talk later." What? Internal graviton field offline, the ship finally announced, far too calm about it. Recalibration in progress. Define progress, I said. The ship did not. I twisted myself toward the corridor, pushing off with careful force. I'd learned the hard way that confidence travels faster than intention when gravity is gone. The research vessel wasn't large, but it was dense with corners, cables, and equipment that had been placed by people who very much assumed down would always exist. I was halfway to the central module when a shape drifted into view from the opposite corridor, moving with infuriating grace. She rotated once, corrected without touching anything, and came to a gentle stop by hooking 2 fingers into a ceiling rail. Ceiling, former ceiling. She looked human enough that my brain tried to file her there out of habit, dark hair pulled back, familiar proportions, an expression hovering somewhere between calm and amused. Then her ears shifted slightly, long and elegant, tapering back along her skull, and the file burst into flames. "Ah," she said, "so it is not only me." "Good news," I replied, "we're both weightless." "Bad news, gravity is dead," and took my dignity with it. Her mouth curved just a little. "Your beverage appears to have achieved escape velocity." I glanced at the coffee globules still orbiting me. One bumped gently against my cheek. It always wanted more from life. She pushed off the rail and drifted closer, eyes following the floating droplets with scientific interest. Her long ears angled forward slightly, something I'd learned, after several embarrassing misunderstandings, meant curiosity. "This vessel has failed in 17 interesting ways since I boarded," she said, "but this is my first full gravitic collapse." "Welcome to human engineering," I said. "We believe in ambition over foresight." What? She reached out and plucked one of the coffee beads from the air, watching it cling to her fingertip. "It smells aggressive." "That's the caffeine." "Is it a toxin?" "Only emotionally." What? She flicked her finger, sending the droplet drifting toward an air intake. It missed and continued on, free and unstoppable. We watched it go. The silence stretched, filled only by the low hum of systems rerouting power like nervous thoughts. "You should anchor yourself," she said, "until we know whether gravity intends to return." "I've been stood up by worse," I said, securing my boot into a floor loop. "You okay?" "Yes," she nodded once. Her ears dipped, then corrected themselves. "Zero gravity is familiar. My home stations use rotational fields. Your ship feels indecisive by comparison." "That's our design philosophy." What? She smiled again, more openly this time, and something in my chest loosened in a way that had nothing to do with physics. We drifted toward the central module together, moving slowly, carefully, like 2 people learning the same dance from opposite directions. Outside the viewport, the stars were sharp and indifferent, scattered across the dark in ways that made human constellations feel like wishful thinking. The central module lights flickered as we entered. Equipment floated where it had been torn loose, cables waving gently like sea grass. The ship's AI pulsed status reports across the displays, each one more optimistic than the last and equally unconvincing. "Graviton coil feedback loop detected," the ship announced. "Manual intervention recommended." I closed my eyes. It always is. She tilted her head. "You are the manual." "I am tragically so." What? I pushed off toward the maintenance panel, catching myself with one hand and pulling the access hatch free. Tools drifted out, metallic and patient. She moved closer, stabilizing herself with one hand on the panel frame. "I can assist." "What?" "I know," I said. "Just tell me if anything starts glowing in a way it shouldn't." "In my culture," she said lightly, "that describes most celebrations." I laughed, the sound oddly loud in the enclosed space. It felt good, unexpected, like finding humor in a vacuum. As I worked, the ship rocked slightly, a subtle shift that sent us both drifting closer together. I reached out instinctively, catching her wrist before she could float past me. Her skin was warm, solid, real. For a moment, neither of us moved. Her eyes met mine, close enough now that I could see the faint variations in color, the way her pupils adjusted faster than a human's. Her ears angled back, then forward again, betraying something she hadn't put into words. "Sorry," I said, letting go immediately. Reflex. "It is acceptable," she replied. Her voice was steady, but her ears hadn't quite decided what to do. "I appreciate not colliding with the bulkhead." High praise. I returned to the panel, suddenly very aware of the space between us and how little of it there was. Zero gravity has a way of removing excuses. There was no leaning away, no casual step back. Every movement was deliberate, every distance intentional. "Human," she said after a moment. I glanced at her. "That's me." "What? You joke when systems fail. It's either that or scream." She considered this. "Your species has interesting coping mechanisms." "We cope loudly." The ship chimed, interrupting us. "Partial gravitic stability achieved. Field strength at 12%. "See," I said, "it's thinking about it." She looked past me, out the viewport, where a faint blue shimmer rippled across the hull as the experimental field tried to remember its purpose. "On my world," she said, "we believe gravity is not a force but an agreement, matter deciding to stay together." That explains a lot about my dating history. She laughed then, a clear sound that echoed softly off the metal walls. Her ears lifted, unrestrained now, and I realized with a quiet start that I'd never seen them do that before. The moment lingered, fragile and unanchored, two beings suspended between stars and systems, waiting for the universe to decide which way was down. And for the first time since the ship had gone silent, I didn't mind not knowing. The gravity did not come back all at once. It returned in arguments, in brief negotiations between mass and intention, in moments where the ship seemed to ask politely before deciding whether down was a suggestion or a rule. At 12%, nothing fell, but everything remembered falling. Tools drifted with a slight bias, bodies leaned without meaning to, and my stomach reacted as if it had been personally betrayed. I floated near the central module, one hand hooked through a strap, watching a diagnostic graph wobble like it was embarrassed to be seen. Across from me, she adjusted a stabilizer line with calm precision, her movements economical, practiced, as if weightlessness were a familiar colleague rather than an inconvenience. The ship chimed again. "Gravitic field instability persists. Estimated time to full stabilization, indeterminate." "Indeterminate is my favorite unit of time," I said, "right after eventually." She glanced at me. "On my world, indeterminate usually means prepare to improvise." Then we're culturally aligned. We drifted closer as the ship subtly shifted orientation, a slow roll that brought the viewport into view. Outside, a pale nebula stretched like spilled light, thin and luminous, its colors bending in ways that made the human eye quietly give up on naming them. She watched it for a long moment. "Your species travels far for something so fragile." "We're stubborn," I said, "and easily distracted by shiny things." Her ears angled sideways, a sign I'd learned meant contemplation. "You risk much for curiosity." "What?" "We tell ourselves it's for science." "That is not a denial." "No," I admitted, "it's branding." The ship lurched slightly, a reminder that physics was still deciding how cooperative it wanted to be. A loose data pad drifted past her shoulder. She caught it without looking, handed it to me upside down. "Thanks," I said, rotating it. "Right side up is more of a suggestion these days." "What?" She anchored herself beside me, clipping her harness into a rail. The proximity was unavoidable now, dictated by safety protocols rather than intention, which somehow made it more noticeable. Her presence changed the space, not physically, but in the way my attention kept finding her without effort. "Your repair," she said, "did it succeed?" "It didn't fail," I said, which in my line of work counts as optimism. "What?" She smiled faintly. "Your language is very forgiving of incompetence." "Self-care," I said. We fell into a rhythm after that, checking systems, rerouting power, responding to the ship's increasingly passive-aggressive alerts. The gravity fluctuated between 12 and 15%, just enough to make movement awkward but not enough to grant relief. Walking was impossible. Floating was misleading. Every action required planning, patience, and a sense of humor about bumping into things you'd sworn were nowhere near you a second ago. At one point, I pushed off too hard from a bulkhead and drifted straight into a storage locker. It opened on impact, releasing a cloud of thermal blankets that wrapped around me like judgment. She watched, expression unreadable. "Do not help yet," she said. "I wish to observe the outcome." "What?" "I am being attacked by bedding," I said from somewhere inside the mess. "Tell my story." She laughed genuinely this time and reached in to untangle me. Her hands were sure, efficient, brushing my arm, my shoulder, each contact brief but unavoidable. When she finally freed my head, I was smiling despite myself. "You enjoy this," I accused. "It is important to document human resilience," she said, "especially when it is padded." The ship chimed, warning. External debris detected. Trajectory intersects current drift path. I straightened, instinctively scanning the displays. A cluster of metallic fragments rotated slowly into view, remnants of something long dead, their paths lazy but inevitable. "Options?" I asked. She studied the data. "Minimal. We cannot maneuver effectively without stable gravity or full thruster control." "Of course," I said, "because that would be convenient." The ship continued. "Estimated impact probability, 27%. "That's not terrible," I said. "That is not reassuring," she replied. We exchanged a look, the kind formed quickly under pressure, equal parts calculation and trust. Without another word, we moved, securing loose equipment, sealing compartments, doing what we could to make the ship less offended by the idea of being hit by space trash. The debris passed close enough to rattle the hull, a muted vibration that traveled through the metal and into my bones. One fragment scraped along the outer plating, sparks flaring briefly against the dark. She steadied herself against the wall, ears flattening instinctively. I reached out without thinking, my hand closing around hers, anchoring us both as the ship shuddered. This time, neither of us let go immediately. The vibration faded. The stars resumed their indifferent watch. The ship's systems settled into a cautious quiet. She looked at our joined hands, then up at me. Her expression was thoughtful, not startled. "Your reflexes are consistent," she said. "I can stop," I offered, though I didn't move. "Do not," she said, and there was no humor in it now, only something careful and honest. "It is grounding." I snorted softly. "In zero gravity, that's impressive." What? Her mouth curved just enough, her ears lifted slightly, then held still. The ship chimed again, gravitic field strength increasing, now at 20%. I felt it immediately, a gentle insistence, like the universe clearing its throat. My feet drifted toward the deck, not quite landing, but closer than before. She released my hand reluctantly, focusing on adjusting her stance. "It seems gravity has decided to rejoin the conversation." "What?" "Let's hope it sticks to the topic," I said. We moved toward the observation module, drawn there by something unspoken. The viewport dominated the far wall, its transparent alloy revealing the nebula in full, luminous detail. At this angle, the light refracted through the ship's weak field, creating faint halos around every star. We hovered side by side, close enough that our shoulders nearly touched. "On my world," she said quietly, "we believe proximity alters probability." "Everything alters probability," I said. "Yes," she agreed, "but not everything chooses to." The gravity ticked upward again, 25%. Enough to make our feet brush the floor, enough to make balance a negotiation rather than a joke. I looked at her, really looked, noticing details I'd missed before, the subtle markings along her temples, the way her ears shifted with her thoughts, the familiarity and strangeness coexisting without conflict. "Does this bother you?" I asked, gesturing vaguely at the ship, the stars, the situation. She considered. "I am far from home, aboard an unstable vessel, with a species known for improvisation and denial." "Harsh," I said. "And yet," she continued, "I am not uncomfortable." I smiled. "We have that effect." The ship hummed softly, gravity creeping upward, slow and deliberate. Outside, the nebula burned on, unconcerned with boundaries or laws or the quiet, growing pull between two beings suspended in its light. For the first time since the drift began, the silence felt less like a warning and more like an invitation. Gravity returned the way a promise does after being broken once already, slowly, cautiously, as if it expected to be doubted. The ship announced each incremental increase with ceremonial politeness, like a host reintroducing a guest everyone pretended not to resent. "Gravitic field stable at 42%, the ship said. "Please refrain from celebrating prematurely." "I feel judged," I muttered, testing my footing. My boots made tentative contact with the deck, not committing, like they were waiting for a better offer. She stood beside me, knees slightly bent, posture adapting instinctively. Her ears twitched once, then settled. "This level is annoying," she said. "Too heavy to float, too light to trust." "Welcome to the human emotional baseline," I said. She smiled, brief and sincere, and for once her ears didn't give her away. The observation module felt different now. The same stars, the same nebula bleeding soft color into the dark, but the subtle pull of gravity changed the way we occupied the space. We were no longer drifting accidents. We were people standing somewhere, even if that somewhere was between systems with an AI that enjoyed sarcasm. The ship chimed again, long-range communication restored, incoming transmission. What? She turned toward the console. That will be my people. Already, I asked, surprised by the note in my voice. Yes, she paused, then added, they are efficient, unlike gravity. What? The console lit up, alien glyphs unfolding into patterns my implant translated just slowly enough to remind me it wasn't magic. Her posture shifted as she listened, attention fully engaged, ears angling subtly with each exchange. I leaned against the bulkhead, giving her space I didn't want to give. The ship hummed, content now, systems aligning, problems becoming future maintenance reports instead of present dangers. After a moment, she turned back to me. They will arrive within 6 standard hours, a recovery vessel. That's good, I said, that's very good. Yes, she agreed, her tone was neutral, her ears were not. I gestured vaguely around us. So this ends with a polite wave across an airlock and a lifetime of telling people I once almost died because gravity took a day off. You exaggerate, she said. You also almost died because of betting. What? Those blankets were aggressive. She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the faint warmth of her body, close enough that the restored gravity suddenly felt intrusive, like it was imposing rules we hadn't agreed to. There is a matter unresolved, she said. I raised an eyebrow. The ship. No, that is resolved. She hesitated, a rare thing for her, us. Ah, I nodded slowly, right, that. Silence stretched, not uncomfortable but dense. The kind of silence that contains options. On my world, she said carefully, we do not engage in physical intimacy without certainty. About feelings, I asked, about consequences. I considered that. On my world, we usually do it the other way around. She gave a quiet huff of amusement. I have noticed. The gravity ticked upward again, 50%, enough that standing felt natural, enough that the ship no longer felt like it might throw us into a wall for fun. I straightened. I don't want to make this complicated, I said, and I don't want to pretend this didn't matter. Her ears lifted, then slowly angled forward. It did matter. That was not a question. Outside, the nebula shifted as the ship adjusted its orientation, light sliding across the viewport like a held breath being released. There is something you should know, she said. My assignment here was temporary, observation, exchange. I was not meant to connect. Story of my life, I said lightly, then stopped because humor felt like a shield and I didn't want one right now. She watched me, eyes sharp, perceptive. You are different. What? I almost got taken out by a pillow, I said. That changes a person. She shook her head. No, before you joked to deflect, now you joke to include. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I hadn't realized that shift had happened until she named it. The ship chimed. Gravitic field at 70%, full stabilization imminent. Always with the timing, I muttered. She took a breath, steadying herself, and then did something unexpected. She stepped closer still, closing the last of the space between us, and reached up, her fingers brushing my collar as she activated a small device embedded in her wrist. A faint shimmer surrounded us, subtle but unmistakable. Localized null gravity field, she said, personal scale, temporary. I blinked. You had that the whole time. Yes. Wow, I almost respect you less. What? The pull of gravity vanished around us, clean and absolute. The rest of the ship remained grounded, but within the small sphere she created, we floated, gently, instinctively reaching for balance that no longer existed. I felt a laugh bubble up, helpless and genuine. You're cheating. I am negotiating terms, she said. We drifted closer, not because we pushed, but because there was nothing stopping us. No down, no up, no convenient excuse to step back. Her eyes searched mine, not uncertain now, but deliberate, her ears angled forward, fully unguarded. In zero gravity, she said softly, there is no accidental contact. What? Only intentional, I agreed. She nodded once, that was all the certainty she needed. The first kiss was not dramatic, no music, no stars aligning on cue, just two bodies meeting gently, lips brushing, adjusting, learning. It was slightly awkward because floating complicates things and because neither of us was trying to perform anything. We rotated slowly, the stars beyond the viewport wheeling with us, and I became acutely aware of my hands, unsure where to put them without a floor to orient intention. She solved that by placing her hands on my shoulders, steadying us both. Her touch was warm, grounding in a way gravity hadn't managed to be. When we pulled back just a fraction, she smiled. Her ears fluttered, then stilled. So, I said, that happened. Yes, she said, and the universe did not collapse. Give it time. She laughed, resting her forehead briefly against mine. You are impossible. I try. What? The null gravity field faded gently, gravity reasserting itself with a polite cough. Our feet touched the deck, solid real. The ship chimed one last time. Gravitic field fully stabilized. Welcome back to normal physics. What? Overrated, I said. Hours later, the recovery vessel arrived, sleek and efficient, everything our ship was not. Her people moved with quiet competence, their long ears marking them as kin, their glances toward me curious but reserved. She stood at the airlock, gear packed, posture composed, the moment stretched, private despite the witnesses. This is where we do the polite wave, I said. Yes, she said, this is where your people say things they mean and pretend they do not. What? I smiled, and your people. We say little, she replied, and mean much. She stepped closer, just enough that only I could hear her. I have extended my assignment. I blinked. You have. Yes, there is more to observe. More probability here than expected. My chest